Hi, and welcome to the SelectedTech podcast, brought to you by a group of 4 MVPs doing webinars, sessions, and interviews on all things SharePoint, Office 365, and the Microsoft AI ecosystem. Their motto is learn, share, reuse. And here they are, Albert Jan, Rick, Stefan, and Tommy.
Hi, and welcome at a new recording, or actually a new webinar for the SelectedTech stuff. So tonight is my turn, and I'm going to talk about the Power Platform, and it's going to be mostly demos. I've actually got one slide, so that's a new thing. But the whole goal is that I wanted to walk through Teams development. So we're looking at Teams development in general, and what I wanted to do is I wanted to show you that Teams development, and I think we've done like 20 recordings with full code, Blazor, Yo Teams generator, all kinds of cool stuff. But Teams development is not only exclusive to those tools. You can actually do some really cool stuff within the Teams development experience if you're a low-code developer. So if you are considering what you can achieve with this, well, bear with us for, I don't know, 20 minutes or so, and we'll walk you through what you can achieve. Now, I have a demo where we do something with reading reminders. I recently saw that there is this really cool app where you could, if you read something, you could fill it into that app. That app will actually know what you've been reading, and then we'll start sending you reminders once in a while on the stuff that you've been reading to see whether you still remember what you've read. And the whole goal was like tiny habits or something like that. So if you get like cues once in a while on the stuff you're reading, it tends to stay more present in your working life, and it actually makes sense in a way. So I was thinking, okay, technically speaking, sending reminders isn't that complex. Getting the data isn't that complex either. So I figured, hey, let me try and rebuild that with low-code tools. So I didn't want to do C#. I didn't want to do Blazor. Obviously, you can achieve it with that. You can do all kinds of cool serverless stuff. But I figured, hey, let's try to demo this with Power Automate only. And when you start thinking about it, okay, the first thing that you need in order to send reminders is you have to figure out, okay, what have you been reading? So I created this interesting list where I figured, okay, I need to put in everything that I've read. So what I did is I added a reading list, and in that reading list I added some metadata. So I've got my title, author, when I read it, I've got the rating that it got on Goodreads, or I've got a rating that I gave. So the first one is what I gave. The second one is the average rating on Goodreads. There is this Goodreads URL. There is an ISBN number, so unique number for each book. So there is some content in there, and this is all stuff that can be plucked from the internet. No need for you to figure that out yourself. So what I did is I created a really quick flow, a RSS import flow, where I just got the Goodreads Rss Feed that's for my account. So if you go to Goodreads, you can actually get this nice overview of every stuff that you read. So let me quickly pick Goodreads and show you.
Yeah, I was about to ask, can you show us? Because I don't use that.
Yeah, there we go. So Goodreads is actually, it's just a website where you can keep track of the stuff that you've been reading. So what you do is you actually, well, it's kind of like you already create a list. So you can go to My Books. You can see here that by default you've got read, currently reading, and want to read. So if there is anything new, you can add it there. And the read list is actually what you've been reading. So if I sort by date read it, yeah, there you can see. So I recently read a book, a thriller. Before that, I read something on investing, Rich Dad Poor Dad, Richest Man in Babylon. So basically what you do is I linked it to my e-reader. So anytime I buy something on my e-reader and I read it, it will show up here. So that integration has already been taken care of. Nothing for me to do. The only thing that I did is I clicked this little button where I say, okay, give me the RSS feed for what I've been reading. So if I click this button, I get that URL. And if I go here, this is basically what I do. I just do a HTTP GET on that content. Now, if I run this, this will then get all the books that I've been reading in a batch of 100. So I figured, okay, I'm going to pick the last 100 books. Obviously, you can do this recurring and or run it every night and get the difference and get the books that been added that day or that week. In my case, the only thing that I wanted to do is click. So there we go. I added a test string, not using it, but what I wanted to do is I wanted to see something in my test string. In the end, I just went through my reading list, and from my RSS feed, I, with a bunch of expat expressions, get the content that I'm looking for. So I'm getting the title from the RSS feed. I'm getting author, date, read, rating, average rating, Goodreads URL, ISBN. So when I run this, I'm assured that, let me see if it's been a while since I run this, but this would just get everything and dump it into my reading list. So that's what I use to fill this. And now I have this list with all the content. Now, the second thing that you can then do is with that content, you can start doing the actual reminder part. And this is where it gets interesting. So what I can do is if I go to my flows, I created a reading reminder. And that reading reminder, I canceled the last 4 runs. So it's not that it's throwing errors. It's just that I wanted to cancel it. But that reading reminder, that will tell me, or it will do something for me in Teams. That was the goal. Now, if I go to edit, it actually is pretty straightforward. You've got your recurrence trigger. So I'm now saying, okay, run it every Wednesday. Then get a item from the reading list, and I'm using a random number. So when I do this, I just get a random book from my reading list. I don't know what book it's going to be. It's going to be one of the books that's in there, and we should be good. Then the next thing that we're going to do is, based on that random book, I want to send a adaptive card. So adaptive card is the way that we're going to interact with me or whatever user that you wanted to do. So in this case, because I'm sending an adaptive card, I figured the adaptive card itself should be in a parameter that I can use later. So what I do here is I went to the adaptive card designer. We've demoed that before, but in that adaptive card designer, I designed a card. It's nothing fancy, but what I do in that adaptive card is, for demo purposes, I put in 3 choices. And one of the choices is actually the author of my book. The other 2 are always fixed, hard-coded choices. Obviously, what I should have done is I would have figured, or the ultimate goal would be, I would go to Goodreads, tell me what are authors that write similar books, because that API is available as well. And then instead of hard-coding those 2 choices, I should have said, okay, I'm going to use similar authors or authors that are in the same genre writing the same types of books. But then what all this does is just sending an adaptive card to the end user. Now, what does the adaptive card action look like? Basically, this is all there is. So I'm sending an adaptive card to myself saying, okay, this is the message that I want to send. Now, if I turn this one on, let me check if it's actually already turned on. Yeah, it is, I guess. Yeah. There we go. So what I can do is I can say run. I'm going to run it now. I'm not going to wait till Wednesday. That's going to take a bit too much time. You'll see that the flow will trigger. And then if I go here, what you see is, hey, can you remember you read this book, blah, 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 blah. Do you remember who wrote it? Now, the first 2 are always going to be wrong. Now I know that, so I can trick the system. I'm going to say, okay, submit. There we go. And then once you've done that, it will say, thank you for your response. Response was sent to the app. And what you can then do in your flow, you can actually see, okay, it succeeded. You see, if I go there, what did we get as return? You actually get your outputs as a JSON object. So here you can see, okay, the data, the AC poll choices, I put in choice 3. Now, what I can then do is, and I can now extend my my flow to work with this data. Now, the only downside is that if I go to the edit, currently, if I do a new step, there is no default option that allows me to get that value. Now, what you can do is you can write it yourself. So it's going to be an expression. It's going to be the item from post adaptive card and wait for a response. And then what you can do is you can write the XPath option to go there. So I think was data like all CP choices or something. But basically, the easiest way to do it is to go to the flow history, figure out what the JSON body was that was returned, and then put it in there. Tommy,
short question: Is this now the low code part?
well,
Yeah, that was fast.
This is where it's interesting, right? If the option would have been here, if there would be like, okay, select the output from the adaptive card, then it would be truly low code. It would be easy. Now, what you actually need to do, you need to Google, hey, why is this not there? And then you get a blog post from someone saying, yeah, you'll need to parse the JSON and you need to do like this, this, and this. I'm like, yeah, that's not really low code. So I left it out of the low code demo part because, well, it requires you to actually write a fairly complex query to get that value. But if you Google, spend like 15 minutes on it, you'll figure out what it should be. And then you can work with it and say, okay, you provided the wrong answer. So I'm going to send you an excerpt of the book saying, hey, please book in 15 minutes to reread this book because it was important to you at some point and you needed to do something with it. So
yeah, I'm totally on your side, and for sure someone with an IT background would be able to do that, because in the end of the day, we all know Excel formulas that are way more complex than this one. But again, the story of the business user that has no IT background doing that stuff.
Yeah, that's where
not so sure about that. Yeah.
What I figured, or what I find fairly complex about the whole low-code stuff. So if you look at this one, this is 4 actions, and it all makes sense, or at least for me, it makes sense. If I go to this one, and I will pick that RSS import again, then okay, still makes sense, 4 actions. But if you go here, if you look at the item, okay, so I'll need to do an XPath query, and the XPath query is not, well, I'm not going to say that it is really complex, but the first time that you're doing it, it actually is like, okay, I've got my for each, then I'm going to parse that for each as XML. So I want to make sure that it's of type XML, and trying to explain this to a business user is like, parsing, what is that? Now, when you have a development background, you're like, oh, strongly typed, and that definitely makes sense. But business users, fairly complex. And then even more complex,
XPath is the 4-wheel drive option of BMW, or? That's the answer from a business user.
yeah. And then once you've got that XML, then you need to do the XPath again. And then it's like, okay, how do I figure out, okay, so there is like item title and then text, and what's that 0 doing there? Because you always get an array if you're doing XPath, so you want to get the first one. And well, you get the gist. If you're doing that for title, it's pretty much the same for the author name text. But if you're doing format date time, then you first need to do the XPath. Let me scroll that. And then get the whatever you're looking for. So I'm doing the user read at, get it as a text string, and then parse that text string as a format date time. So really awesome that you can do this, but well, you can imagine that if you're working with data, it's, or at least for me, the weird thing is that setting this up took me, I don't know, 10, 15 minutes to get the flow in. And then I pressed play, and I don't know, 40% of the data entry failed because either it was a null value, or it was an invalid date, or it was a not null value, and I expected a null value. I was like, okay, this should have been easier. I just want to get some data, go ahead, figure it out. I don't care about null values. And there are all kinds of things you can do to fix that, but it almost starts looking at full development. But still, just sending that adaptive card, getting that reminder in Teams saying, hey, if you read this book, can you remember who wrote it? Is, well, pretty straightforward. So I really like it as a demo that even without really complex technology, you can design a fairly complex process and make it scale run for everyone within your organization. Make sense?
Yep. Need to unmute. Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Unmuting helps. So with that, I did have one slide, and I want to switch to my slide. Let me see if that works. Yeah. So when presenting this, I presented it at the ECS last year, and at the ECS we had a discussion, or the discussion in the room was like, okay, you're building solutions for teams, and we had I had a demo for every scenario. So building tabs, building a flow, building I don't know, notifications, all kinds of things. The really cool part about this is if you're looking at what you can do in Teams, it's tabs, it's notifications, it's adaptive cards, it's really complex stuff like messaging or voice and video integration within your application. But in the end, almost all those things, except messaging extensions and voice and video, can also be achieved with the low-code platform. So if you're building a Power App, you can actually build that Power App to become a tab, and it will just work like whether you build a native tab or a Power App, it will work as that tab. When you want to do things with notifications, you could say, okay, I'm going to build everything with Blazor, but the notification part could be a flow or a logic app sending that notification for you, because all the plumbing is then already in place. So when you start thinking about a maturity level for teams, when you start thinking about, okay, what is my organization capable of undoing Teams? So let's say a large proportion of your user base is just getting started on Teams. They're just using chat. They're just using their like first meeting experience. You're not going to build this really complex application into Teams. Not going to work. If your company is already using Teams for, I don't know, 2 years, then it might make sense. But you really have to start thinking about, okay, what's the maturity level of my organization compared to what they're using in Teams? And if you think about that, then on any level in that maturity, then you can always apply low code. And let's say we're going to say low code with a grain of salt, because potentially there could be some code involved. But generally speaking, it's really easy to send the hello world sample will always work. But even some more complexer notifications or adaptive cards can be set up really, really easy and really quick with the Power Platform. So while prepping my demo for the ECS, I was pretty happy with how quick you could set things up, how quick you could demo things. And I would even go as far as that, I don't know, a demo, you could spend an hour on stuff around notifications and you would have a really nice demo. Maybe spend a day on some more complex scenarios, but it will really help in driving adoption of Teams if you can show how easy it is to set up stuff like that. So that was my demo for tonight. Really quick one today, almost 20 minutes, so not too bad. Questions, remarks?
Yeah, what do you mean with initial, repeatable, defined, capable, efficient?
So this is actually the I should have done all the slides for this. There is the maturity. It's the 4C model, the maturity model. Let me grab a slide for that. Maturity model 365. That is this one. So this is the N365 maturity model, and it's based on the capability maturity model, where they explain when you start using software, or anything within your organization, you start at level 100 initial. It's just getting started around the process, and everyone is doing something, and that's it. Then you start thinking about, okay, how can we implement more repeatable patterns? How can we make sure that it's not a new project or a new implementation every time? Then once it's a bit more repeatable, it becomes more defined and more agreed upon as a standard business process or a standard operating procedure. Then once that is in place, you can manage those and you become either managed or capable. And finally, you come into the feedback loop where you start optimizing existing stuff. So it's a maturity model to iterate up on within your organization. Now, I just took the level 100 to 500 and plotted into Teams development. It's obviously when you really do it like this, then you start, you'll need to consider, okay, what are optimizing tools within Teams development that you can use? What are things around software development to make sure that you're managed or defined? So it's not 100% fair. The main goal was, okay, when you are just a initial organization, you're just starting with Teams, then it might not make sense to build, I don't know, a chatbot. And well, chatbots are all the hypes, but if you're just getting started with Teams and you're just turning it on, having a really complex chatbot that can do everything for you might not be fitting for your use case.
So more like a crawl, walk, run approach, but with more background and more layers and options to differentiate the phases.
Yeah.
You talk to too much managers.
Yeah, probably. Well, the other downside is if you start developing and no one is using it, you're a sad developer as well, right?
No, I have a customer, they're not using even chat on Teams. So yeah, it would be crazy if you start building chatbots. So
yeah.
Or even adaptive cards for that matter.
Yeah.
Cool.
I like the Power Platform. I feel that I've been doing too much Power Platform lately, so I should probably prep some CLI development demo for next time just to balance out a bit. But
yeah, you need to create an ACE for that, or it would be perfect for a Viva dashboard.
That would be an interesting one as well.
I don't know how much or from the adaptive card, how much you can reuse there.
Probably quite a lot.
You will have the plumbing from SPFX around it to maybe get the data, but the adaptive card should be pretty the same, right?
Yep.
Yeah. I'm not 100% sure if it's exactly the same. Let me check.
Yeah, it will be maybe here and there or a different adaptive card version or something.
Yeah, I'm thinking about the adaptive card version because this is still 1.0. But yeah, in general, it's just one text block with some questions, so it's not that that hard.
That would be interesting. So you can resurface that also in Viva.
Yeah, that's actually a good idea. I'll add it to the list and try to find time somewhere.
Okay, he really talks too much with managers.
Yeah.
Tommy, I don't know how it is for you, but you seem to have all the time in the world. How's that?
Yeah, you have an entire year now, so minus 10 days.
Yeah.
Cool.
Cool.
Then. Thanks, Appie.
Thanks, Appie.
And that's it for tonight. And we're going to start prepping the next one.
Yes, we do.
Idea.
Cool.
See you around.
See ya.
All right.